right, I will start the countdown for the live stream in 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you are. If you're watching the recording, whatever time it is where you are while watching it. My name is David DeSanto. I'm Director of Product for the Secure and Defend stages here at GitLab. To kind of get us kicked off here, I'm going to hand it off to Sid to vocalize his first question.
Yeah, thanks for that, David. On slide 3, it says it mentioned air-gapped and offline networks, and we had a call last week, and we determined that air-gapped offline networks make it seem that GitLab has to function on its own, while there might be a possibility that the users don't think GitLab should function on its own, but it should use internal registries like internal npm and gem registries instead of external ones. We're not sure yet. We need to check with the user, but can we update our wording to say internet for now, or do you first want to check with the customer, or is something else going on?
I would like to check with the customer first. I also did some pinging through my network over the weekend, and everybody came back saying, no, what you're describing you're doing is an air-gapped environment. And so I left it that wording because I want to make sure everybody's on the same page with it. Like the concern I shared, I think on Friday, is intranet does not imply disconnected from the internet. And that's what the original intent was of all this, that yes, we could use internal services to work, but we have to absolutely not call out to the internet.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Maybe it's good to have a definition and say, I think offline network doesn't make sense to me. Air-gapped makes sense to me, but maybe we should define air-gapped as being not that GitLab is on its own, it just can't access the broader internet, and that you can assume there's internal registries available.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So offline network was added to the original Epic because customers wanted to be able to upgrade without connecting to the internet, but I agree. I think we could just remove offline and just call it air-gapped, not a definition. But I'm sorry, Nicole, you're going to say something?
We right now in the Slack channel are discussing the best way to describe it. I'm waiting any more feedback before I update the MR with our definition. So hopefully that'll be today.
Thanks, awesome. Slide 9, you want to talk a bit about the shortfall in MR rate?
Yeah, I can talk to that. So there's a couple different facets to it. One of them is the way that we started calculating the MRs, at least with Sisense, is that it includes all of management, myself included. However, with doing it the way we standardly measure, we still did come up a little short. We're at a 1% increase, and our target was a 10% increase. There's a couple sort of pieces to that, which is, well, the primary one being with 12.8, how we were doing it. We intentionally were trying to get caught back up for our tech debt work. So not a great answer. There's probably other aspects to it that we haven't fleshed out yet, but that's sort of the when you roll all that together, that's what happened.
Thanks for that.
I think we then can go to Alper for the next question.
Hi, my question may not make sense. I just heard that, defend and secure stages or sections were merged. Like, does it mean that in the analytics and in the about.gitlab.com, do we have to show them in together or separately?
Yeah, so Wayne, from my quick skimming, looks like he answered it properly. So section is an internal term at GitLab. And so we have sections that have multiple stages. In the case of secure and defend sections, prior to this merger, they each only had one stage with the same name. So we moved those stages into one section. But you can see this with other sections as well. Like dev, I think, has 3 or 4 stages that make it up. So when looking at it, kind of goes from the top at section, that goes to stage. Stages have groups, and then groups have categories. We only talk about the categories and the stages publicly. Does that answer your question, Alper?
Yeah, so in like we do several dashboards, analytics, so that means we shall have secure and defend separately still, right?
The security dashboard, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I'm pretty sure
Analytics. Yeah. So,
today the security dashboard includes findings from the secure test. I think the long-term goal, and if Matt's on PTO, so we haven't confirmed this, but I believe he intends on also having the defend items show up there from the operation side. So it'll still be one single dashboard. He is working on reporting, and I think actually I should say Sam White, who's on the call, is working on improving the reporting of each of the individual categories. But I think long-term, Matt, or I'm sorry, Sam, you can correct this, but I think you and he are talking about also having those findings show up on the dashboard if there's like an alert of some sort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Sid, for linking to the hierarchy.
Welcome.
Okay, so Greg, you have the next question.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, and I'm still fleshing this out, but I will update my comment in the doc. Essentially, I feel the term air gap has come up a lot, and part of the value of it is for discoverability. But really, air gap, there is a very clear definition of air gap, and it's a network that is physically isolated from insecure networks, and insecure networks include the internet. However, if we really keep focusing all of the issues and epics and things on air gap support, I worry that these solutions will apply to people running in offline or closed networks, or even a firewall where there's an implicit deny all rule, but they won't find these solutions if they're searching for offline or closed network or firewall, because we do kind of settle on the term air gap. So how could we expand, I guess, the results from getting secure working in an air gap, expand and communicate that this is a benefit for a much larger group of customers who are not in a specific air gap, but they do not have internet access or intermittent internet access?
So I started telling my answer, and then Nicole stepping what I think I was going to say here. So I agree with what your intent is, Greg. I think what we would want to do as part of that definition of what we mean by air gap, we would also say this also works for the following use cases. Because I agree with exactly what you just said. If you address air gapped environments, by definition, you're now supporting offline networks and the other components that would be there for outside of financial and federal based accounts. Is there anything you want to add to that, Nicole? I know you're still typing.
Nope, same as above. I'm trying to put everything everywhere and do a blog series in an unfiltered set once we solidify this.
Okay. Are you good with that, Greg, before we move on to the next one?
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Tim, you want to vocalize your item?
Yeah. So I just got off last week. I met with a prospect, and we were talking through how there's a lot of value in GitLab kind of merging a lot of different teams and getting them a part of that development lifecycle. And I showed them both the security dashboard, which I loved. It was a really great example of being able to pull in all those results. But I also showed them the operational error tracking integration with Sentry, which they thought was really useful too, because from a security standpoint, first line of defense, if you're getting application errors, there's a good chance that there is a security incident that could be imminent, right? I met with another customer who was also talking about, hey, like I would love to be able to see when a developer is attempting to push to a protected branch and they're not allowed to? Where are those failures at? So, pulling up auditing, do we have any hopes of getting kind of from an auditing perspective for the actual repository and the project, as well as the application monitoring and error reporting? Are those going to be engaged in that kind of dashboard methodology?
Yeah, so at a high level, I would say yes. The defend team has been talking with the ops section on where to potentially expose additional logging. In the short term, as part of our MVC, we're not going to be having that within Sentry today. But I will say we're just like on the precipice of starting to get defend outside of minimal. Good example of that is we just moved container network security to minimal. And I know Sam has an aggressive plan to get that closer to viable over the next several months. So there is a chance that Sentry would become a place where we may want to expose alerts. The second part of your comment about like malicious developer actions, that's part of the UEBA category that we're working on.
Gotcha.
Today they have been doing a proof of concept with the security team. The security team was able to alert on malicious GitLab runner activity. And so we want to extend that to include malicious user activity. So I think the example I gave on one of these a while ago was like, let's say, Tim, you always do polls and you're located wherever you live, and now you show up halfway around the world and you're doing pushes. Like that would be then alerted on that your behavior has changed. Long term, I know that Matt wants to get into blocking, having a blocking mode for that, but initially we just want to alert on it before we get to the level that we have confidence that we can actually take a direct action and stop.
That's great
the
to
behavior.
hear. I've never clicked on UEBA, so I should do that.
Yeah, we broke as part of this refocus and merging the two stages into a single group. We've actually broke UEBA into two parts. The first part is user behavior of the GitLab application. And we actually have several customers who are essentially begging us to speed up our development on it because they're worried that they don't have visibility into what users are doing within the application. The second part, we're doing it for the user's environment. So their application or service that they're building with us, and that we're calling container behavior analytics to kind of be in line with the industry. So it's a nice combination of anomaly detection, threat activity, and like heuristics data to be able to say, hey, something bad's happening with your application.
Yeah, the work that you're doing is great. I like to tell customers that GitLab is building out a kind of a user experience for auditors, and auditors have never heard that they're being built out a user experience for. So I think that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and then I would say, and it's what Wayne is typing, but yeah, I mean, please reach out to the defend team if you have examples of things they want to look at. I don't think it's in this group conversation. It might have been the previous one. I'll make sure I can send you a link to something where we are showing like, here's the MVC for it, what we're initially shooting for, but Matt would love to talk to any customers you're talking to. We're just starting to get more engaged with customers on defend. I know Sam, again, who's on the call, he's been very happy over the last 2 weeks engaging with customers on his roadmap. I know Matt would appreciate it too.
Yeah, absolutely. As I had that comment, yeah, the more quote unquote misuse cases that we hear about that customers are concerned about, the on detecting unexpected behavior, the better. So we can validate our plans with those.
Yeah, I think, by the way, you belong in marketing, Wayne, because that misuse cases is a good marketing term. I think we might have to steal that and use it on the website.
Please. Hey, David, there's also a follow-up question by Mike Terhan.
Yeah, I was gonna kick it over to Mike. So Mike, do you want to vocalize?
Sure. Yeah, so a lot of my customers are very compliance oriented, and having the maintainer be in charge of things like environment variables for every single environment and things like that means that in order to get any velocity out of the GitLab system, they need to give that to the developers to manage their own kind of product. But then they have production environments, they have higher level environments that they don't want developers being able to touch. They have separation of duties, separation of concerns, sorts of boundaries. And so my recommendation so far has been like maintainer the maintainer dynamic is great for open source projects and things like that, where the internal team manages that, and then external contributors are developers or something else. But inside the walls of your organization, you want a project that's specifically for the developers, and then a separate project for the ops team that has like the IAC code and other sorts of deployment methods that can need to be held back from developers, so developers can't change production. Is there, like, they all kind of march down the path of, you know, we'll just keep maintainer for ourselves and then let the developers be developers, and then that pattern causes these sorts of difficulties. And so creating a separate project works around it. Is there a better solution that we can build in, or something on the roadmap that may address this sort of thing?
Yeah, so at a high level, I'd say yes. The defend team is engaged with the dev section on improving granular permissions. I was going to ask Sam White if he wants to add anything, because he's been the one taking the lead with them.
Yep, so I'm trying to type this out, but I talked with Jeremy Watson recently. He's over Access, and they do have a few different items on their roadmap to get towards more granular permissions. It sounds like near term, they're at least, they're definitely taking an MVC approach, which is great because it means we'll get something out sooner rather than later. And, again, I would defer to Jeremy for a more official statement of his roadmap, but it looks like at least near term, in the next couple milestones or so, we should start to see at least some changes there that will help give us that more granular access that we need.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I started telling what you were saying, but if you could finish, it'd be great. Okay, and then I guess on the next one is Ethan. Do you want to vocalize your question?
Sure. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit about how we're going to take SAST, DAST, and dependency scanning to complete.
So that's a great question. I'll take a quick stab, and then I'll let each of the PMs who are responsible for it add any color they would like. So at a high level, what we're looking to do is be able to displace competitors as part of that. That includes both feature set as well as usability. In the case of things like SAST, I know we're looking to improve code coverage. DAST, we're looking to begin to eliminate false positives. And then dependency scanning, I know Nicole's looking to also cover more languages. So I guess to kind of go down the list, we'll let each of the PMs add any color to that. I can't see everybody's online, so Taylor, are you on the call? Do you want to speak to SAST?
Sure. For SAST right now, we're working on developing epics that'll fully track out all of these items, but at a high level, largely getting our scanners that we do have today updated and continuously updated, considering expanding support for other specific languages that we don't have good coverage of today, reducing our false positive rates, looking at how we can standardize outputs of scanners across all of our scanner suites. That at a high level is sort of the direction we're headed towards.
I was wondering, is there some initiative to allow customization of the rules or inject like custom logic into those?
That is absolutely something we're looking at, yes.
Okay, and then Nicole, do you want to speak to what you've written for dependency scanning?
For dependency scanning, I'm hoping to improve our UX score because it's not that great right now. And I would like to get the suggested solutions to be more frameworks than just the one we have supported today, and then also increase overall language coverage. And I'm also wanting to make sure that we have a competitive main feature set with at least one competitor.
Yeah, that just leaves DAST. I did a quick scan. I don't see Derek on the call, but we can ask him to follow up and put notes in here. But I know at the high level for DAST, I know it's eliminating false positives. I know I think Seth's on the call. I know Seth, if you have any additional color you want to add for DAST.
Yeah, so it's really focused around false positives, and then also being able to reproduce errors and create regression tests as well.
Do you have any other questions on that, Ethan, before we, I guess, move on to the last item?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, great. And then Wayne added a note of what we're planning on doing. Did you want to vocalize that, Wayne?
Sure. So just taking feedback from previous sessions is we are going to have a video that we record and put on GitLab Unfiltered in advance that covers the slides, so folks can view that in advance if they'd like to.
Yeah, I will add the intent long term is to not have like 20 plus slides for our short group conversation. I wanted to make sure that everybody got to see the expanded view of what it meant to merge the two sections together and now have one unified security focus. I think Sid, I'm sorry, you added an additional item. Do you want to vocalize it?
Yeah, don't have to be sorry. I just added it. You have really nice slides about who's in the teams. I wonder whether you were missing something from the product categories page. I'm trying, but it's going to be hard to get everyone to work handbook first. And so the handbook should be the great source of truth for that. But maybe the layout of the handbook is not understandable enough or something like that. I just was wondering about that.
Oh yeah, so what I did for those slides, I just cut and pasted what was in the handbook and then formatted it so it was a little bit easier to read for the teams and for the categories. The only thing that is on the slides that is in the handbook are the internal categories. I didn't put those on here just because they're internal, they're not really customer facing. Example of that is like the language specific component for SAST, and then the two categories we pushed out of this fiscal year are the only ones that should be missing.
Cool. Glad to hear the product categories page was adequate.
Yeah, I will agree with your comment though. I think we could probably work on formatting it a little bit easier so it's a little bit more legible. That's something I figured I'd talk to Farnoosh about over the next couple of weeks.
Awesome.
Okay, that means we've gone through all the open questions. Does anybody have anything they want to vocalize before we wrap up? Okay, well, thank you everyone for attending. That'll be live on YouTube later in the day, and everybody have a great day and talk soon.